Good evening.
Good evening, Prof.
How are you?
Prof, I'm very fine. And you?
I'm doing okay. David,
That's nice.
how are you?
I'm doing well, bro.
Good. Sam, how are you?
I'm fine, Prof.
Good.
Hello, everyone.
Lina, how are you doing?
Doing fine, Prof.
I'm wondering how many Zoom live class do you have? Any of you can answer how many?
Two.
Two. Let's see. Sam, in your case, 2 classes.
Yeah.
Dennis B, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, last week, your presentation is very passionate and very, active. I like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Dennis M, how are you?
Thank you, sir.
Are you ready for today's presentation?
Yes, please. My part was very voluminous, but I'll try and deliver to everyone's understanding.
Of course. They will enjoy, your presentation, I bet. And by the way, we are supposed to have 2 presenters, Dennis M and Mang, and up to now, we still didn't have his paper yet. So I'm not sure whether or not we can get it. Can any of you share any, unique special stories over the week?
Yeah, I think I have a special story. I happened to contact one old friend of mine.
You mean old friend of you in Korea or in Ghana?
No, in Korea, but in Ghana.
I think we lost contact for a while, and then I got the contact back from a friend. So we spoke on phone. I think yesterday, yeah. And then we were sharing memories in school, how we used to go to classes, and then how we were behaving in classes, and how the school was entertaining, the good days, the bad days, and it was fun. It was fun. We shared memories. Yeah. So I think it made my week very interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sam. You must be very, blessed. You are regaining your lost friend.
Yeah.
How
Oh.
did it happen? How you been get in touch with her again?
It was a friend. She posted that friend's picture, and I was
Ah,
like, wow, how is she doing? Where is she? It's been a long time. Can we get in contact? And then she was like, oh yeah. So and then I was able to get in the contact, and then we spoke for almost an hour. It was nice. It was a nice experience.
is that just a friend? Is that your ex-girlfriend? Are you talking about?
No, not my ex-girlfriend.
Nice,
She was
nice
she
question,
was
bro.
my
Nice
assistant.
question, bro.
She was my no. She wasn't my ex-girlfriend. No. She wasn't my ex-girlfriend. She was my assistant chaplain. I was the chaplain in my
Hey.
secondary school, my second cycle. And then she was the assistant female chaplain. We used to have male chaplain and a female chaplain. Yeah, so she was my assistant. But for some time now, I say maybe ever since I left Ghana, we lost contact. So I saw a picture on a friend's status. I was like, oh, it's been a long time I spoke to her. How is she doing? And so yeah, she's fine. I was like, I asked whether she has a contact, and then she was like, yes. So got the contact, and then I called. She couldn't pick the first time, not knowing she was in church. So later she called back, and then we shared memories when we were in school, how we were being punished by other seniors, and then we also became seniors, and a whole lot of So it was a fine time talking. Yeah, so my week was
Of
blessed.
course.
A question answer.
Wow.
What about Enoch and then Dennis Mensah? She also shared their.
No,
man, bro,
the
I
way you are
have my own
talking,
experience to share.
Mm.
I have my own to share, bro.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Isaac.
On Sunday, the other students will be meeting on Sunday to celebrate the goodness of God. So if anybody is interested to meet, you are free to meet us. Venue, Isaac Stroke, Dennis M. House. So all the students are invited. Thank you.
I see.
Dennis B, you are not invited. Dennis B, you are not invited.
Everyone is invited except Dennis B.
Except Dennis B.
So Dennis B is very, very isolated colleague in this class, I think.
Yeah. In this context, he doesn't fit into the picture. He should stay wherever he is. He shouldn't talk.
Dennis, napons around.
All right, I think we are missing 3 colleagues at this moment. Lucy, Richard, and Meng. And also all of a sudden David disappeared, From the very first, David came in, but all of a sudden he just disappeared. I don't know what happened. Can any of you know about what's going on this for our missing colleagues?
I'm going to check up on Richard
Okay, good.
and
Please
get
do
back
so.
with you. Yeah, get
Mhm.
back with you with the feedback.
And President Francis, what's going on the other 3 colleagues except Richard? Right now we are missing David, Meng, and Lucy.
I'm actually trying to get to them, but they haven't responded yet. So
Oh, I see.
yes, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes our life journey is very positive and making us feeling better and feeling good, but sometimes our life journey runs very tough. So I wish nobody can have that toughest week over the last. In the meantime, we started our class from the coming of Jesus Christ, the first coming, incarnation, and that happened in Jerusalem. That's the very beginning of so-called Christian church history. So from its birth in Palestine means it is mixed, and it originated from very Jewish culture and history, and Jesus himself as a humankind was Jews also. So from heaven, on the other hand, from the soil of Palestine, that is a very important background, important environments for us to look at before the formation of Christianity. Then it is developing, it is progressing, it is growing, it is expanding. Yeah, if you not speak, it's nice for you to turn up your microphone, your sound. So it is expanding geographically, regionally. It is expanding from Jerusalem to Judea, and Samaritans, and Gentile souls to the Mediterranean. That's space-wise. But on the other hand, the nature of constituents of Christian church, from the very beginning, Jews, Palestine Jew plus diaspora Jews. But furthermore, Gentiles, not Jews, non-Jews, Gentiles coming in to the members of Christian churches. So Christian church became very visible in the empire, and very visible, visible enough for the Jewish, religious leaders, to be felt, threatened. So next, persecution broke out. That's from outside, from Jews, Jewish leaders, Jewish people, from Roman Empire. On the other hand, since Palestine Jew and diaspora Jew plus Gentiles within the church need to struggle to figure out which is the truth, which is not. So controversies broke out as well, debates, and the question about Orthodox Church arised. All kinds of engagement with heretic teachings. Marcion might be the first figure to generate church to figure out the canonization of the teachings, Jesus' teachings. And after that, the 3rd century, last week, all kinds of persecutions, systematic or occasional. After passing of the 3rd century, to today's lesson, we are entering into the so-called Imperial Church. In the very beginning, we are going to meet the Emperor Constantine. So that's going to be 3 chapters we are going to deal with. Constantine, historian Eusebius, and monasticism. Imperial Church versus monastic movements. Well connected or may not be fit with each other. Imperial Church, the church in the very secular world, and the church turning from persecuted to powerful. But on the other hand, hermits, those early desert fathers, they are escaping from that victory, that conquering Roman Empire made those sincere Christians escape from the world, the Imperial Church. So that is 3 major themes we are going to deal, and we are going to hear from Dennis M's presentation. Constantine, the beginning of Imperial Church. And when we hear this story about Imperial Church, I want you to think about the very important theological and historical questions about what might be the sound relationship between church and state, state and church. When we are discussing about medieval church, some might call it Christendom, some might call it corrupted, secularized church in church history. That is very important, the relationship between state and church and state. And we are going to see that very, progress of the very relationship between these two in the reign of Emperor Constantine. All right, Lucy, how are you?
I'm fine, Prof. Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see you again.
Me too, sir.
Okay, good.
How was
Okay,
your
Dennis
day?
B. It's all yours. Let's go for it. Dennis M. I'm sorry, Dennis M. Not Dennis P.
Okay,
Dennis P is
Prof, can you
retired from last week.
Prof, can you please put up my
Okay,
my presentation on the screen so that it will serve as a guide for me to
no problem. No problem.
okay, thank you very much, Prof.
You're very welcome.
So we are going to look at this very chapter or this discussion by focusing on some points. So first, we want to look at who Constantine was, how he became the sole emperor of the Roman Empire, and then we will also focus on how his conversion to Christianity had a significant change in the course of history, and then what we have in the world today. So before I start with Constantine, I want us to look at the historical context in which he lived in. Okay, prior to his ascension to the throne, and before Constantine came onto the scene. Last week, my colleagues talked about the persecution. They talked about Diocletian and all that. So I want to highlight all those things, and then we will jump into Constantine, and then we'll come down to Eusebius and then the monasticism. During the reigns of the Roman Empire, it was basically a military rule. What they did was the commanders or the military people who rose through the ranks to become commanders will struggle for power. They will take power and then they will rule. So during that time, they had a lot of constant crisis in terms of who is supposed to rule. So there were a lot of crises during that time, and they didn't have crisis just from outside, because from the north they had the Germanian empire invading them, and then from the east they had a Sassanid empire also trying to expand their empire. And from within, they had these internal struggles within themselves, the military people who everybody wanted to rule the Roman Empire. So when Diocletian came into power, when he conquered the then emperor, and then he took over power, he swiftly changed the political system. What he did was he established a kind of government where you have we have two Augustus and then two Caesars, and each Caesar works under the Augustus, and this was done to decentralize the political system. In case one of the Augustus passed on, then quickly the Caesar under him will be elevated into his position, and then he will handpick someone to fill the shoes of the empty Caesar post. So this system brought about some stability in Rome, in the Roman Empire. So as time went on, Diocletian ruled for close to 2 decades. He ruled close to 2 decades, and then eventually everything broke down. So now let's look at Constantine. Constantine was born in the late 2nd century, and then he's a typical military man. his father was an army officer, and then he rose through the ranks to become an Augustus. So Constantine rose, he also rose through the rank. He served with Diocletian and other emperors. So he was very, very familiar with the military system. So if his father passed on, so as his father passed on, the military declared him as the new Augustus. However, he wasn't supposed to be the new Augustus because there's a system or a protocol they needed to follow. The then Caesar was supposed to become the Augustus, but the then Caesar wasn't really famous with the aristocratic system. The noblemen were not really fan of him. They didn't really admire him, and then the military people, he didn't have the backing of the military. So Constantine was the one they preferred, even though he wasn't the one who was supposed to be the emperor at that time. So there were two claimants for that throne, and the person who was supposed to become the emperor was Severus, but he didn't have that affection from the people. So Maxentius was the next in line, but Maxentius was also not favorable in terms of what the people wanted. They were still pushing for Constantine. So there was that kind of uproar and then unrest in the system. And then when you look to the eastern the eastern part of the Roman Empire, we have Licinius and then Maximinus also struggling for the Augustus position over there. So let's go back to Constantine. So Constantine and then Maxentius were fighting for the throne. So this led to both men bringing their troops. Constantine took his troops to Rome, and then Maxentius heard about Constantine coming to Rome to fight him. So he also took his force to go and meet Constantine on the way. He left the safety of his city and then went to meet Constantine. And then Constantine, being a military man, he was very strategic and he was very smart. So he hid his troops in the bushes, and then when Maxentius got to the Milvian Bridge, what we call this battle was called the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. So when they got to the Milvian Bridge, Constantine realized that they can attack them there, and then when everything goes wrong, they are going to defeat them. So they attacked them at the Milvian Bridge, and then they defeated them. And in a way to escape, Maxentius drowned in the river, and because of the shield and everything and his armor he was wearing, it was too heavy, so he couldn't swim to the other side. So he drowned and then he died, which gave Constantine he became the sole leader in the West. Constantine took over the West and he became the sole leader. So in the East, Licinius and then Maximinus were also struggling for power over there, and then they also went into battle, and then Licinius won. So after that battle, shortly after that, Constantine then went down to Milan to meet with Licinius. He went down to Milan to meet with Licinius, where they had an agreement, and this agreement was to put an end to the state persecution of Christians, and then the other thing was the first was to put an end to state persecution of Christians, and then the other thing was to make Christian a legal religion in Rome. So that was the first change that Constantine brought during his reign. So these two men, Constantine and Licinius, they were very suspicious of each other, because their ultimate goal was their ultimate goal was to become the sole ruler of the Roman Empire, but not the division, not the division in, of Roman Empire into the western side and then the eastern side. Their ultimate goal was to become to unify both western and then the eastern side, and then become the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. So because of that, started to arise between the two men, and then it led to a series of battle between them, and then finally in 323, Constantine triumphed over Licinius, and then he became the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. So he had won the Roman version of Game of Thrones. So after beating Licinius to the throne, Licinius later on we were told that Licinius was murdered. He was assassinated, and many people assumed that it was Constantine who tried to silence them to avoid any kind of stage back and all that. So after he became the absolute master of the empire, he decided to roll out his own plans. So what he did was to build a new Rome. He wanted to build a new Rome because the where the capital was in Rome, the people most of the people, the populace were pagans. They were pagans, and then before before the battle at Milvian Bridge, Constantine had a vision that he was instructed by Jesus. We are told that he was instructed by Jesus in his dream to put the monogram of Christ on the shields of his military people. So they painted a Christogram on the shields of his men. So that gave him, so it kind of gave us a sense of a battle between a Christian force and then a pagan force, and the Constantine triumphed over the pagan force. So we are told that he attributed the success to the willingness the will of God, and then the power of God. So we are told that was the beginning of his conversion. That was when he started to believe in Christ. So when Constantine became the sole ruler of Rome, he was uncomfortable with the pagans, so he decided to build a new city. And this city was to be built on an ancient land, which was called Byzantium. And Byzantium was in the east, where Licinius was. So Constantine went to Byzantium. He was walking around the place, and then he did something no Christian and no emperor has done before. What he did was, during his visit in Byzantium, there was this church in Byzantium where they were having worship. So he entered into the church, and then he fellowshiped with the people, and it's something no emperor has done before. So that gave them a sense of, oh, this is an emperor for the people, for the Christian people. And he didn't do any rituals with the pagans or any kind of commemoration to acclaim his victory. But what he did was to go into the church and then to pray with them and all. So we are told that, okay, this solidified is Christianity, its conversion. So when Constantine decided this victory enabled him to take that city, that Byzantium city, and then what he did was to dedicate it to Christianity. So he built a new city altogether. And we are told that Byzantium, where it was strategically positioned, in the sense that it had a lot of wealth, it had more people there, it had a lot of artists, it had people, thinkers and all. So as compared to Rome, where they had the seat of government and all, it made sense. It made sense for him to move the capital to Byzantium, and then he built a whole city there, and then it was called Constantinople. The city was called Constantinople. And then after, we are told that he built churches, he built colossus, we are told he was a very good man, because in times of flooding, and then in times of famine and all, Constantine shared money, he gave food to the people, and then he did all sorts of things. He gave tax reliefs to the people. So he was loved by the people. And then this city grew, this city attracted a lot of people. And then eventually it began to grow. The population, the place got populated. So Constantine began to roll out policies that favor the Christians. He gave them more wealth. He gave them more wealth. He began to give them positions in the Senate, and then Christianity began to take positions of power. Formerly in the Diocletian era, because of the persecutions that started, most of the Christians, the bishops, those people who had posts in the military, who had posts in the Senate, and those important places of government were all demoted, they were all sacked, and then they started persecuting them. But when Constantine came into power, all these things changed. The Christianity faith began to take a new look. They began to take power in terms of how to rule and all. So Constantine really did a lot for the Christian faith. And then we were told that as he moved the empire, he moved the seat of government to the east, which was Constantinople. The barbarians began to invade from the west, and then they wanted to take some of those lands and all that, but because of their military, they had a very powerful military. Rome had a very powerful military, so they were able to keep their borders safe and all. So we Prof, can we go down to the next? So after the city, after the Constantine built the city, we moved to the from
NSM, before
yes, please.
go on your presentation, I think this part of your presentation carries very important discussion issues. That is, when political leader decide to move the capital, that is very important decision to make. Am I right?
Yes, please.
So in this specific case of Constantine, and also all other cases included, why Constantine decided to move Roman capital, officially Rome, to new Roman capital, Constantinople? Can any of you guess, or can any of you suggest, or can any of you share your reason for why Constantine decided to change the capital of the empire? Dennis B. Last week, you're so passionate and so aggressive. Today, you surely be retired. Try to get back. You have to turn on your sound. We cannot hear you.
Yeah, hello.
Go ahead.
Maybe Constantine wanted to also develop Constantinople, and probably that's where he hailed from. So he wanted developmental projects to also touch that place.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Any other colleagues? Anything else? Then Dennis M. What do you think about
Okay.
the reason?
So we are told that there are more Christians in the East as compared to the West. So because he went there, and then there's this church, Haggai Sophia, where he went to have the fellowship with the people. He decided to build that new city over there to favor the Christians, and then to grow the church as a whole. And also it was in terms of military, they had the sea to one of their borders, and then the inland also, which means that if anybody should come by sea, if any invader should come by sea, they will be able to fend them off. And if anyone should come by land, they will be able to fight them off. And then in terms of the finances of Constantinople, they had a lot of commerce going on there. They had a lot of commerce, businesses, trading, and all that by sea and then by land. So it was strategically positioned for all those things. So those three things I think are the significant factors for him moving the capital to Constantinople.
Yeah. So the city of Rome, the old capital of the empire.
Hello, Prof. Good day,
Yes.
Richard. Sorry,
Richard, where have you been?
my network was worrying me, but it's okay now.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad to have you back, Richard. Welcome back.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Yeah. We just finished the first part of our, our material, the Constantine Empire, and we just, shared our thoughts about why Constantine decided to change, Roman Empire capital from Rome to Constantinople. And Rome, that's old city and conventional. So there are rich tradition. It's hard to change or reform, and a lot of aristocratic leadership over there. So instead of putting hard efforts to change those current orders in that very, very proud city, for Constantine, it's better for him to have his reform from his whole new perspectives, building a new city. So if you look at history in your own country or history in Korea, when dynasty changed, or when very, very aggressive political leader, what he called king, changed the situation, one of their big project might be change the capital. in the long history of Goguryeo, ancient Korean dynasty, or Silla dynasty, or when the demise of Goryeo dynasty, when new dynasty Chosun started, the first thing those political leaders, what it calls king, did was changing the city. So changing the capital means, starting a new era, a new period. So in that sense, this changing of capital carries that deepest theological, political, social meaning to it. All right. Next.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So now we are going to look at from the unconquered.
Wait, Dennis B, do you have a question? Wait, Dennis B, do you have a question?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I just searched on encyclopedia. Hello, Prof.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
They explain this as he wanted how do you, well, okay. Yeah, Constantinople. Constantinople laid on the European Strait of Bosphorus. So that portion, according to records, that portion of land was very important and strategic to the Romans. So in the act of reuniting the whole empire in 324 BC, like he wanted to move the capital to Constantinople as a result of its importance due to its location. Thank you.
Yes, and that part of explanation already done by Dennis M as well. Dennis M already pointed out that's one part of the reason. In addition to that, I added those additional explanation why Constantinople was set up by the new united one master of Roman Empire, the new leader, Constantine. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So from the unconquered son to Jesus Christ. So, Prof, as you rightly pointed out, in Rome there were a lot of pagans there, and then most of the noble people in Rome were all pagans. They worshipped their gods and all, and it was uncomfortable for Constantine to stay there, so he had to move to Constantinople, and this led to this. Even though he didn't really change. Paganism was the state religion during that time, but what he didn't do was to change the state religion to Christianity, because he didn't wanted to anger the noble people and then the Roman people at large. So he knew they normally relied on the military to take over power. So he didn't want to do anything to cause any kind of uproar that would push him out of office. So he tried to favor both the Christian people and then the pagan people. So from the unconquered son to Jesus Christ, what he did was he favored the Christian people. But strangely, he wasn't baptized. Even though he called himself a Christian, he wasn't baptized. He only got baptized when he was about to die. So this also set a new precedent for people. A lot of people, even though they said they were Christians, but it took them time to baptize, and then they normally baptize in their old age. So during that time, Constantine favored the Christians, and then he rolled out policies that policies that didn't kind of try to push out the pagan system. All he did was try to change the ideological underpinnings of the Roman Empire, in the sense that um, he gave the Christian people more power. He gave them seats in the government, and then he gave them access of worship, and then he gave them a holiday, which was on Sunday. Unfortunately, on Sunday, it was a day set aside for the pagans to worship the unconquered God, and it was quite fascinating how he tried to set those kind of holidays, as he gave that holiday to the Christians to assemble and then worship God, as well as the pagans also worshiping their unconquered son, which was a god in that regard. And what else he did was he 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 constructed, or he wrote a prayer for the military people. He wrote a prayer for the military people, and then this prayer was neutral. It wasn't skewed towards Christianity, and it wasn't skewed towards paganism. What he did was the the wording of the prayer he mentioned the unconquered God and all that, and then he said something also about the Christian people. So the people were not really angered by what he did. They supported him in all those dealings. And during that time, the Christian people in the build up to Constantinople, when they rolled out policies for the buildings, they were building churches and all. But what we realized was that Constantinople took the form of the Roman architectural structures. Even though he said he was building a new city dedicated to Christianity and all, however, we realized that there was some kind of cultural heritage, Roman cultural heritage, and politics there. Some of the churches which were built in Constantinople took the architectural structure of the senates in Rome, and then they also went into their shrines and then confiscated some of their artifacts and all to beautify Constantinople. So they kind of tried to push paganism little by little into the background, even though it was still the state religion, and then people were still worshiping their gods. So from there, because paganism was the state religion, it meant that Constantine was called a high priest, because the high priest, because of the paganism, the high priest is the highest form of is the highest office in that form of system. So he became the high priest, and was also a Christian. So from there, we moved to the persecution, from persecution to dominance. After Constantine's conversion, after Constantine's conversion, after he had died,
Excuse
and then
me.
he had.
Then Sam?
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is very, important, statement. We need to reflect. In spite of all this, all this favorite supportings, favorite acts for Christian church, but almost to his dying day, the very dying moment in his dying bed, Constantine continued functioning as the high priest of paganism, even though he made this act to move away from the ancient, pagan city, the capital Rome. Why Constantine made these ambiguities, and these ambiguities also reminding us the borderline, ambiguous borderline between Judaism and the early forming of Christianity. We've been discussed, right? So when Christianity emerged from the soil of Jewish culture, Jewish Bible, and Jewish heritage, so there is some, ambiguities, from the very beginning. And also here, we can see ambiguities, between under the realm of Roman Empire, Christianity and paganism. Out of this emergence, Christianity crystallize, identify the essence of Christianity itself. So it is very important, process in the development of, church history. So when you look at this part of history, you have to, think about, and you need to connect this part of history to the earlier, the emerging from Judaism to Christianity. I think there are many similarities if you compare that early part with this, later part in Constantine era. Did you get it? Understand? No? Yes? Francis? I cannot hear you.
Okay, Prof.
Mm-hmm. Did you understand?
Yeah. If you can please rephrase. I think I was trying to follow that. If you could please rephrase the question, I'll be glad.
All right. Then M, please continue.
Yes, please.
Dennis M.
Yeah. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So from persecution to dominance. After Constantine's conversion, after he had passed on and other people take over the reins and of power and all, those who came in, some of them were Christians. What Constantine did when he took over power was to change. He didn't change the whole political system, but he did it in such a way that he ran a kind of dynasty. So he put his children, his sons, and then his nephews in a position of power. So they were Caesars, and then he just positioned them in all those in all those posts. And when he died, his sons took over, and then they also favored Christianity. They just followed in the footsteps of their dad, and after they had also left office, Julian, one of his nephews, we are told, continued with the earlier policies of supporting the Christianity faith and all that. And sometime in the future, we are told that in 382, Gratian also passed a decree to stop state funding of paganism, and other things they enjoyed, other privileges that were given to the pagan people. And then later on, we are told that during Theophilus' reign, he outlawed paganism completely and then changed the state religion to Christianity. So we continue with the impact of the new order. The impact of the new order. So what happened was during Constantine's time. Before Constantine's time, Christians worshipped in private places, and also they had convocations in the cemetery and other places of secrecy, because they were being persecuted and all that. So when Constantine took over power, and then he now began to favor Christianity. He built churches, and then they legalized Christianity. They began to worship. They began to worship together in these churches that were built for them by Constantine, and Christianity exploded during that time. Christianity exploded, and then the bishops and then the pastors and those people in high positions in the church began to take power in the Senate. They began to control dioceses. Initially their role ended in the church. What all they did was to control the church in their vicinity. They didn't go beyond that. All they did was just to preach and then control their internal affairs and all. They didn't go beyond that. But during Constantine's time, you realize that the state and then the church was intertwined. They became one. The bishops were given positions in the Senate, and then they presided over disputes, and then whatever decision they come to is final. It's more like what the judgments that would be passed in the court of law. So the Christians became powerful, and then they they began to the Christian faith itself started to change. Now the bishops were dressing well, they were being clothed well, they preached in wonderful garments and all. And so we are told that through archaeological excavations and all, we have evidence of all these churches that were built by Constantine, which are no more there, but I think there are some that are still standing in Constantinople. So we go down to reactions to the new impact, where the church had power. They had to deal with issues of power, issues of wealth, and all those issues that cropped up during Constantine's era. So we go down to reactions to the new impact.
Okay,
So,
before go down to reactions to the new impact, Dennis M., do you think that progress, that change from the church in persecution to church in the power, bishops, they had to escape from those, attackers. But all of a sudden, those bishops became powerful under the support of the empire. So they dressed well, as you mentioned. They ate well. So do you think all this progress, is there a positive growing? Well, how we gonna interpret this process of expansion of Christianity under the sponsorship of empire, those political leaders?
I would say I would say it was a good thing, but it came with its own consequences.
Then there is a very balanced, in basically you view it good things. There is growing, things, but it has its own consequences.
Yeah.
So what kind of consequences are you specifically,
So, okay, so what happened was when these when these bishops took power and became very prominent in the Senate, passing judgments and then extending their role from which was limited to the church, and now becoming ruling over a whole region of churches, and then coming together to deliberate on Christian or theological issues. The consequences that came with all of this wealth, power, is that the church became corruption crept into the church because there's money. People wanted political favors. They needed political favors. They needed to. People had their own agenda. Some of them wanted to become senate, so they had to buy their way into the church to get some favors and then rise through the ranks and become powerful or noble men in the city. So what it came along, what all these good things came along with was corruption, which was, I think, was the main canker during that era. People had to buy their way into the church. People were bribing people. They were buying positions in the church, and then these bishops were even began to do things they were not supposed to do. They were doing things they just distanced themselves from the true Christian life, and they were living all sorts of lives. So corruption was the main issue that the church had to grapple with.
Yes.
Hello, hello, Prof. Please, I also want to say something. Richard.
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Prof, to add to Dennis M's contribution, I believe that it became a leeway for people to join the faith, not necessarily accepting the Christian faith, but it is like a solace area, like you come there for liberty, for freedom, because if you are under the Christian faith, certain things you do, you will not be punished or you'll be protected. So the people just find it as a leeway to maybe join them to maneuver their way through. So, and practically when we look at our current Christian faith, is similar to that area of Constantine, where people are doing the wrong thing, but in the name of faith, I am a Christian. They come into the church and they do wrong thing, but when you talk about it, then they see you to be a different person because you are a Christian. So I saw it was not people came in, but they didn't come because of the faith, but they came because they needed something out of the liberty Constantine had given to the Christian faith at then. Thank you very much.
Yes. Church in simplicity, nothing to gain except Christ himself. So this simplicity is not just, simple design, simple format, and simple custom. It's more than that. This church of simplicity then means, church, even though did not carry many decorations, but they were able to focus on simple message of Christ and Christ himself. But this one became powerful under the protection and under the patrons of the empire itself and the emperors and their family. And there are many add-ons beyond that simple message. So there are many purposes to be member of the church, to be elevated, to be promoted, and to be close to some powerful inner leagues, So all these, some historians, this winning of Christianity in Roman Empire can be characterized as secularization of the church. So that's very critical view of this winning victory. But still, we need to have this balanced view, So this is winning, of course. And as Dennis M mentioned, this is a good thing for the church, Finally, church conquered the Roman Empire. That aspect still over there. But on the other hand, right after these chapters, we are going to see the outburst of monastic movement at the very high of winning of the church. That's the other aspects, secularization. So whenever we study church history, we need to view multiple aspects of that history, that story, even though this, winning itself. Okay, right now the time is 8:24. Let's take 10-minute break, 10 minutes break. Then we will be back here 8:35. Will it be okay to you? Okay, not okay. Okay, 10-minute break. Getting back here 35, okay?
Okay.
Ishimon, 괜찮아.
when you came back to the video, please turn on your video. Yes, thank you. All right, Lucy, Isaac, and Richard, if you got back to your place, then turn on your video. Right, we'll continue Dennis M's presentation. By the way, where is Dennis B? He's disappeared. The impact of the new order. Dennis
So we
M,
are on,
continue,
no, we
please.
are reaction to the new impact. We are going to talk about the reactions to the new impact. So as we said earlier, the influence on Constantine towards the church gave a new form to the Christian faith. And now Christianity became a safe haven for the secular people. They claim that they are converts now, so they are Christians. And also it's also corruption. Corruption now became the new order of the day in the church. And formally, and some of these and because of these issues that came up or arose, some of the Christian sects were not happy about it, so they complained, and then we are told that formally, when you convert to Christianity, you will be baptized. You'll be baptized, and then you'll be taken through some form of classes, for a want of a better word, classes, to build up your faith, and then for the bishops and then some of the pastors to teach you, and then teach you about the Christian faith, the Christian traditions and all. But now, as Constantine came into the picture, who himself was not baptized, it became a new precedent. People came into the Christian faith without being baptized, and then later on got baptized. So these people, some of the Christians who were really into Christianity, who wanted to live out the true Christian life, were not happy about all these things that arose. So they decided not to break bread with the Christians. They decided not to fellowship with them anymore, and this led to people moving from Christianity and then going into the wilderness. They retreated into the wilderness to practice what we'll later discuss, which is monasticism. So we continue. We move. So we move on to the next topic we are going to talk about. So this is called the Official Theology by Eusebius of Caesarea.
Excuse me.
Eusebius, okay.
Here, reaction to the new impact and this new monastic movement and secularization. Here, I want to remind all of you of the fact that we are not engaged in a discussion of yes or no questions here. Imperial Church, whether it's good or bad, monastic movement, whether that's good or bad, that's not the way we ask the essence of these, Christian, events, very huge events. when we talk about, many sects, many schools in Judaism, Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Gileads. That's the many schools, sects within Judaism. So this process also carries some critical side or positive side. So again, I encourage you view this movement not just from the perspective of true or false or yes or no approaches, but rather what kind of positive elements out of this and what kind of critical elements behind. That's the way we Christian historians try to view the historical processes. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the official theology, Eusebius of Caesarea, who was known as the father of church history. Eusebius was one of the learned people, was one of the learned Christians during that time, and then he recorded or he documented most of these happenings or events that happened during that time. He talked about Jesus Christ through to emperors, and then he then talked about the matter that happened during that time. And we were told that he was a staunch Christian who pushed. They learned, and then they were pushing for Christianity to become one of the main religions in the Roman Empire. And he experienced. He didn't record all these things in a vacuum. He experienced it. He was there when all these persecutions was going on, and when Constantine came onto the scene. So he because of his intellectual abilities, he recorded all these happenings, and we are told that he put everything together, which was now called the church history. So Eusebius was a bishop in Caesarea, and we are told that he spent most of his time in Caesarea. I believe that's why they named, or his name was, they coined his name that way, Eusebius of Caesarea. And during his time, he talked about belief. The main theme of his work was about the Christian faith, and then some theological debates that came up at that time, which we are told the Arian controversy, which was the Arian controversy. And this controversy was concerned with the divinity of Jesus Christ. Some people suggested that um, Christians say, from the Christian perspective, we are saying Jesus Christ is equal to God. And then other people were saying that these pagan philosophers were saying that no, Jesus Christ is not the same as God, in that we are told that God begets the Son. God begets the Son. So that phrase, was quite controversial. They were saying that he's not the same as God. And then Eusebius also countered their opposition, or their opinion, with the fact that in the Bible, we are told in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then again, during creation, we are told that God said, "Let us create man in our own image." So he was like, so who was God talking to, or who was he talking to that he said, "Let us create, man in our own image"? And then in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So in that sense, even though later on Jesus Christ became man, the word the word was transformed into man. So Eusebius was like, no, God is equal. God and Jesus Christ are the same. And then he also gave some references from the Old Testament to solidify his position. But all he wanted to do was to unite the church. He just wanted peace to reign. He wanted the Christian people to have a common understanding, and he wanted them to have a common understanding, and then for them to move away from all these controversies. But the pagan philosophers too were, they had their own views about the Christian faith. And what happened was there was a council, the Christian faith. They had a council that preside over these kind of issues. And seated in that council, after Constantine ascended the throne, he wanted harmony in the Roman Empire. Pagans do their thing, Christians do their thing. He didn't want any kind of controversy. So when this issue came up, now he has favored the Christian people, and then in the new Christian council, seated in there was Constantine himself. He was the arbiter of the council. So bishops from all over the world, came, and then he was there. He was the president there, for want of a better word. He was the president there. So the thing, he had power. Constantine wielded a lot of power. So when this controversy came up, he was quiet on the issue. He was very quiet on the issue. And this is a man who had power. You could have just closed that case by just saying, okay, this is what the bishops are saying, because the bishops had the power to correct any mistake or any theological mistakes, and all. They had the power to bind and loose any kind of thing. So things that did not align with the Christian faith. But here's the case where Constantine was silent, and then they looked on for this the Arian controversy to go on and on and on and on, and then it even lasted we are told, for close to 35 years. It was never resolved. So a lot of theological issues came up during that time. And Eusebius, we are told Eusebius also constructed or gathered these informations during that time with pride. He was happy about how the church or the Christian people moved from persecutions, where people were hanged, people were nailed to the cross, and then this matters where they died for the Christian faith for no reason, but just for the love of God, and then the love of their fellow Christians. They died. And Eusebius, who was even there, one of his teachers, he was even murdered or persecuted during that era. But some way, somehow, Eusebius did not suffer the same fate as his senior colleagues and all. So he managed to gather all these facts and all these underpinnings and all these things that cropped up during that time into what we now call the Christian faith. So during this era, there were some underpinnings. We are told that okay, I've already mentioned that the Eusebius talked about where we had a lot of examples from the Hebrew passage to counter these controversies. The Hebrew passage laid down some of these things, that examples that were used to counter this theological standing of the pagans. And then Eusebius also preached the preaching about the coming of the kingdom of God. Eusebius saw Constantine as, I don't know, the kingdom, they mimicked, they thought that because the Christianity faith was ravaged during Diocletian time, and then now Constantine came, and then everything changed. They were like, okay, this is a vision from God. This is someone who has been sent to them by God to save them. So they really didn't talk about the kingdom of God. To them, it's they saw Constantine as someone who has been appointed by God to preside over the affairs of the Christian faith, and so something more like mimicking the kingdom of God on earth. So they really didn't talk about some of what what the core faith, the Christian faith, talks about, the salvation of people, and then all these things were postponed. All these things were postponed, and they were focusing on how joyful and happy they were because of Constantine, who favored the church and built churches for them and all that. So this will lead us into the monastic reaction. So the monastic reaction, we know about monks, and these people, before this thing came up, it was as a result of what was happening in the church. When we spoke earlier, we talked earlier about corruption, we talked about secular people, pagans, um, seeking see, moving to the Christianity faith for protection and all that. So these people, this other sects of the Christian faith, were not happy about it. So they decided to move away. They decided to move away from what was happening, and then they found themselves, or they seek shelter in the deserts, in the wilderness, and then in caves and all that, to practice what they termed as the true Christian life. They termed as the true Christian life. So during this time, what they did was they had their inspiration from some notable people in the Bible. So they look up to John the Baptist, and then Jesus Christ himself, who fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and who sometimes move away or move away, or isolated himself from people, just to go and pray to God and all. And then John the Baptist, who went into the wilderness, and then we are told he ate lobsters, and then honey and all that. So they took their inspiration from these people. So we talk about the origin of monasticism, monasticism. So we are told that these people, these monks who left to seek shelter in these deserts, and then all these isolated places. One notable place was Egypt. Egypt was the hotbed for these people. They went there. They went there to seek sanctification. They wanted to have a personal relationship with God, and during this time they fasted, and then they prayed, and then they just withdrawn from what we all know as a community setting. They just walked away from all that, just to seek the face of God. And so Antroth we are told, became the meaning of solitary monk. And so in so I've already talked about he had monasticism had its roots both in the Bible and from within the church and then outside the church. So yeah, outside the church, Prof, can we go down? So outside outside the church, we are told that these people had the impulse that if a great man is someone who can control his sexual desires, and then who can live a life of celibacy and all that, and then you need to devote yourself to Christ and holiness and all that. So this kind of idea also inspired the monastic life. So we will now talk about the first monks of the desert. So the first monks of the desert, we are told that Anthony, someone we will talk about is Anthony. Anthony was one of the athletes during that time, one of the people who practiced the monastic life to the core. And then they mentioned Paul as well, but we are going to focus on Anthony for the meantime. And then we are told that Anthony, even though Anthony didn't write any book pertaining to his monastic life, we are told that someone called Anastasius was the one who wrote the biography of Anthony. And we are told that Anthony came from a wealthy family, and then along the line, his parents died, and then he had enormous wealth. They left everything to him. They left everything to him, and he had a sister. And for him, he just wanted to live his life, just live on the world, and then just enjoy life. But what happened was he went for a church ceremony or a service where the preaching talked about we as Christians, we giving away our wealth, to poor people, and then living the life of Christ. So this memory verse that was preached that day touched his heart, and then he decided to give off everything he had to the poor, and then he left a small portion that was used that he used to cater for his younger sister. So after doing this, he moved into the desert, where we are told that he lived in the desert for 13 good years. He lived in the desert for 13 good years, and then he practiced this monastic life. And during his 13 years, Anastasius recorded that he had challenges during this time. So he moved into the desert, and then we are told that this is a desert. You don't have anything. There's no food. There's no water. Nothing. So we ask ourselves, how did he manage to live? How did he manage to live in the desert? How did he manage to survive for 13 good years? So we are told that during that time there were pilgrims who travel all the way just to seek his wisdom. And these people, when they get there, they give him bread, they give him some water and all that, and then he intend speak or talk to them. They tell him their issues, and then he tell them how to go about it or how to resolve them, gives them solutions and all that. And during these 13 years, we are told that he had a lot of issues. The devil came after him. He sent women to destroy him. And we're told that he had to struggle with beasts, and then the devil himself. We are told that he had to struggle. The devil beat him up and all. He was beaten by the devil, and I think this is captured in Michael, this I've forgotten the name of one of this famous artists. He painted this canvas of Saint Anthony struggling with the demons.
Is it Michelangelo?
Michelangelo. Yes, thank you for the. Yeah.
He was a Renaissance painter.
And so thereafter, after that kind of struggle, the struggle he had with the demons and all the trials he went through during his stay in the desert for 13 years, he moved back closer to the city, somewhere around Alexandria, where he resided in one of the forts, the abandoned forts over there, where he still practiced this monastic life. He practiced the monastic life, and then we are told that people came to him to seek words of wisdom, and then he gave him food and for him to survive. Prof, please go down. So the next person we are going to talk about.
Before going down, Dennis M. Before going down, I'd like to emphasize, this is a very important, fact that we historians remember. These two names we can call the first monks, Paul and Anthony. But how these two names became the honorable name for first monks? Because of these two great Christian writers, Jerome and Athanasius and Jerome, two great writers, and from our seminar perspective, two great historians, because these two, their names had been recorded, and because of their records, 2,000 years later, we can still honor them and remember these two pioneers of monastic movement in the church. So still valuable application out of this learning, that is, recording is very important, and the things recording the history is very valuable. So that is one of the emphasis that I encourage you to remember out of these teachings. And also, again, this is not black and white issues. This is not true or false questions at all. But here still, why booming of monastic movement? Why people, Christians, devote their lives to become monks, nuns? Why they, went out to the desert? The life in the desert, a lot of uncomfortable environments, very hostile environments for humankind to live. But why? Why these devoted people commit themselves to go out to take those uncomfortableness rather than comfortableness? And here, as Dennis M. quoted, from the text, that these monks came to the conclusion their life was holier than that of most bishops and other leaders of the church. And this sentence implies what kind of truth behind. Can any of you figure out, what kind of truth or what kind of, learnings we can draw out of this description. And can this describe right or improper descriptions? I'd like to hear from your opinions, your interpretations. Is it true these monks are truly holier than most bishops? Is this proper, description for those monks and for those, bishops?
Prof, I don't think it's because the Bible says that there's none righteous. So but maybe in that perspective, how they sell people maybe committing sins over and over, they thought that being closer to them is going to influence them or affect them in their relationship with God. So they want to isolate themselves from them and then have a, say in quotes, a holy relationship with God. Yeah, they in their perspective, maybe they thought that was right, and then they had more opportunities to concentrate on God, focus on God, interact with God and the Spirit. Yes, maybe they were driven by such, but if mainly they think they are more holier than them, I think that is righteous. They should have rather, find ways and means to, in their own way, interact with God. But as a whole, I think most of them got what they were looking for, one way or the other, as they wanted to interact with God, to see who God is, to have more in-depth knowledge about God in order to teach people. I think as a whole, they were able to do that because as they isolated themselves, people came to them as Dennis Mensah presented for solutions to their troubles, and he was able to give them some sort of help. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all I can say about that.
Yes, very good. And from the very beginning of the church history, Christian church tends to be very, very missional, very, very evangelistic. Our God, oneself, came down from heaven to earth to save us. Very, very missional and evangelistic. Am I right? So in that sense, a church must be in the very center of human life. Church, what if that church is separate from our, center of living, center of humankind, that is too much isolated one. So if you're doing your own theological education, what if this theological education does not connect it to your real community and life, This is just, abstract learning, So this learning, this theology must be connected with, your living and your community as well. But out of this sentence, this is not just a simple comparison between bishops and monks. Monks doing better than bishops. I don't think so. This is not, if you read that way, you do not understand this sentence properly. But rather, bishops and other little church, the church of the powerful, and secularization, institutionalization, and beginning to be powerful, all these monks, another wing of the church, felt threats. So this is the balance of the church at those 4th century, 5th century, 7th century. And my second question to you all is, do we, Protestant church, still carries these kinds of so-called monastic tradition? Catholicism, they do have, monastery traditions, in this, 21st century. But do we, Protestant church, including, Presbyterians, Methodists, Episcopalians, and, Pentecostals, Baptists, do we Protestants carry this kind of, monastic tradition within us, among us?
I don't think we carry that. We might, one way or the other, isolate ourselves for a while, maybe to the mountains or maybe in our homes, lock ourselves in our rooms to pray. But I think we come back to the people, the church, to minister to them, to evangelize to them, compared to the monastic way where they move. Actually, they isolate themselves and then they stay there forever. We don't actually isolate ourselves to a particular jurisdiction and be there forever. We actually, if we go out, it's for a particular period of time, and then we come back to give to the people what we have received. I think, yeah, that's what I see. I think Mr. Richard has a lot to say about that, since he's actually been engrafted with the Scripture Union Department. I don't know if he's around.
And Dennis B.
Hello, sir. For me personally, I don't think the modern day Pentecostal churches and charismatic churches are into monasticism. I think they see those ways as a bit primitive and primitive. I think, and they see it also, they perceive it as extreme. For me personally, in Ghana, what I noticed about Christians, as in spiritual leaders, they go to mountains probably for a week or two, or maybe a month, but it wasn't continuous. Maybe they break for a while, come home, get something to eat, and also rest. So it isn't as extreme as monasticism. Like, I think it's a milder way. It's a milder way, and those methods are a bit primitive for the modern day Christian. Thank you.
I see. Very good. So again, the sentence looks like these two leadership of the church are very contradictory. And from this sentence, monks' spiritual sense is superior than that of bishops. But I don't think that is appropriate. Proper approach to read the meaning of this sentence. There is a paradox between. There is irony between these two leadership of the emerging imperial church. Later, monastery tradition carries the centerpiece of Christian spirituality and leadership training in the medieval church. Many popes came out of monastic traditions. So these two are, in some sense, very related. From the beginning, they look like very separated. Still, modern days, Catholicism carries these two wings, parish leadership and monastic leadership in their spirituality. So in this sense, Dennis B mentioned about that's not permanent, but 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, retreat activities, retreat devotion might be a part of, monastic, tradition. I think that is, that is an interesting observation as well. But modern day Protestant churches, very institutionalized and secularized, may need this kind of, devotional awakenings, not to be away from the people or center of the humankind's living, but in order to come back to be healthy, bringing healthy spirituality to the community. What are your observations to, current church in your country, in Korea? Very, very institutionalized. Some part very bureaucratic. So we need some reforming spirit, awakenings. And one of the alternatives might be not just strictly going back to this 4th century monastic movement, no, but this kind of a challenge to the secularization of the empire and imperial church. I think that is very, very important challenges of the church at those days.
Prof,
Yes.
I'm not really clear with your submission as how the current church or the Protestant Christian body should inculcate the monastic approach to Christianity.
Okay.
I am not really clear with it. How
Yes.
are they? You see, the monastics at first, the monks were, admitting themselves to have a spiritual awakening, right? So, but then they abstained themselves from the people, isolated themselves to stay there forever. So how are we going to implement this in our time, in our days? How are we going to do this spiritual awakening, and then in what division or departments in this Christian body are we going to awaken that? Is it, and then we don't tend to move away from our homes or from the church like the way the monks did, but we want to do it in the church. So if you want to do it in the church, I don't know if you could help us, how or anyone amongst us could help make me understand how we're going to spiritually awaken ourselves.
Very good. That is a very, a good question, I think. Here, when I say the two terms, imperial church and monastery or monastic movement, seemingly two institutions that I am talking about, but it is more than two institutions. Why monastic movement gain the power? Because of the very success of the institutional church, what it called imperial church. Because of that victory, because of that success, as a matter of fact, became the very huge cause for the growing of monastic movement. Sam, am I right? Yes, yes. So on the other hand, for Korean churches, out of their maybe 140, 50 years history, we made great success growing story. In Seoul, you can see many Red Cross lights during the night. And we do have a lot of huge mega churches, maybe 7, 10 biggest church in the world located in Korean Peninsula. That is a great story, huge victory story, successful story. And this success might be also, whether we are conscious or not, maturized, secularized, institutionalized. Of course, Protestant church, they do have many prayer house in the mountains, retreat center in the mountains, But do you know, when most Koreans visit those prayer homes and retreat center in the mountains, they do have urgent issues to pray. Urgent issues to pray. Maybe illness in one of their family members, or himself or herself, business bankrupt. Those kind of critical life issues push them to go back to that place. And this is right or wrong. This is true or false issues at all. When we are desperate, we need to pray. That's the very biblical message. Am I right? I'm not criticizing that part of Korean tradition, but when monastic movement occurred, they have much bigger pictures, Secularization of the winning church itself was the issue they tried to raise before the God of world. So in that sense, in our church, Korean church, we need some kind of, centerpiece to challenge the essence of the very Christian spirituality. And if you engaged in everyday, daily pastoral ministry, it's very consuming things to do together. So some leadership of the church may engage in that spirituality to preserve and not to be contaminated by all those kind of institutionalization and secularization. That might be one of the way to implement that tradition to modern our days. Will it be a little bit clear then now?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
All right, let's part. Go ahead.
A minute. Okay. Now move on to Bacchus and communal monasticism. So after Saint Anthony, we come to Bacchus, and Bacchus, we are told, is not. We don't really know the founder of the communal monasticism, but what we know is that these people, or this form of monastic life, was not established or did not come into existence and was was practiced in the desert. What they did was they lived around the communities. They built residence around the communities, and from time to time they withdraw, and then come back, and then they proclaim or they spread the word. They spread the word. So the background to Pacamius, the background to Pacamio becoming a monastic, a monk, is that before that he was a soldier. He was a soldier, and during one of the war campaigns, they were displaced. He himself and some of his people, they were displaced, and then they found themselves in a Christian community, and then they were really taken care of by these Christian people. So he was really fascinated about the way they were handled by these people. So he wanted to, these Christian people were kind of monks. So he wanted to really know what it was all about. So he vowed, or he told himself, or promised himself, that if after his service in the military, if he comes out of the military, then this is what he's going to do. He's going to pursue the monastic life. So his wishes were fulfilled, and then after he came out, he decided to um, go into this monastic life. So he also withdrew, and then he knew a lot about Saint Anthony. So he decided to pursue or walk in that same in his footsteps. So he withdrew into the desert, and then we are told, or it was recorded, that at some point he had a word from a vision, or a word from God, or I don't know, an angel or something. And we are told that in this vision, or this word that came to him, was that he shouldn't withdraw into the desert, but he should create this new form of monasticism, where he built residences around the communities, and then he took in people to train them as monks and all that. So he built these residences, and then people came in, and then they were practicing the traditions of monasticism. But what happened was, his first attempt didn't work, and then we are told that the people he brought in were complaining about the regime, or the kind of rules that he laid down. They were not so happy about it. They felt uncomfortable with the regime that he was running, and they left. And from Pacamius' point of view, he was saying that, no, these people were the wrong people. They didn't really pick the right people for this kind of new thing they are trying to do, this communal monasticism. So later on, he set out to establish a new monk, or residence for monks. So he did that, I think, with his brother. So he did that, and then they selected people, and then they were, this time around, they were very stringent in their selection. So they just didn't allow anybody to come in. So they selected the people carefully. So these people came in, and then he taught them about how to before that. I need to mention that the basis for this kind of practice was that the Bible tells us that the inspiration is that we, as Christians, we are told that the very first commandment, or the very major tenets of the Christian faith, is that love God, and then love your neighbors. So they didn't see the reason why you would move outside to the desert, just to seek the face of God, without having any relationship with people. So in order to kill two birds with one stone, why don't you move into very closer to the community? You practice your or you try to seek the face of God, and as well, have relationship with people. So this provided a background to this whole new movement. So in this residences that he built, we're told that he built a lot of residence for these monks. It wasn't just what he built and where he was. No, it spread. This residence, he was told that he was supposed to build this residence across, so they really spread. So these people came in, and then he taught them. They prayed. Sometimes they withdraw, they pray, and then they seek the face of God, sanctification and all. And then they were taught about communal labor, where they had to help each other. Everybody was treated equally. There was no favoritism and all. So, and these people were they didn't just pray and just seek the face of God, but they did other things, communal labor and other things. And then they also went into some kind of economic life as well. They were weaving baskets, and then they were growing plants, where when they are done with all these things, they sell them to make some money, and these monies are used to purchase things, food and clothing, to give to the poor. That was the communal aspect, where they had to relate with people. So they did all that, as they also practice, or they seek the face of God. So this was basically what they were doing with the communal movement of monasticism. And after that, we are also told that later on they came up with a new thing, with a new thing, where or a kind of naming for the heads in the residence, where they have the abbot as the head, where it's called father. So they refer to Pacamio as the father. They refer to him as the father, which is abbot. And after his death, before he died, they had these rules. These rules were, or a textbook where they have a lot of rules that became the tradition, what they were supposed to do in their residence, what the communal monasticism was all about. This guided them to practice it carefully. They didn't want to sway away from the traditions that were laid down. So these things were laid down, or they were documented. So that was what happened with Pacamio. And also we're told that his sister also established similar monks communities for women, and they also practiced similar things, where they came together, they weaved, and then they did other things, and then they traveled to other cities just to spread some form of they had some form of evangelism. Yeah, I think the better word is evangelism. So that was what they did. And so basically they gathered and prayed, and also they helped the poor. And then they spread the word. So this takes us to, and okay, before that, because of his initial experience with the first establishment, where it wasn't fruitful, when he started the second monastery, what he did was, those who were the gatekeepers, if someone wanted to become a monk, and then they come to the residence, they get they are outside the residence, the walls of the residence. So they don't open the gate immediately. They allow them to be outside for some time, maybe let's say for some weeks or some months. They stay outside. This was to test their patience, their willingness to practice this life of monasticism. So this takes us to the spread of this monastic ideas, or monastical.
Okay. Since our time is up, then Sam, we're gonna stop here. And next week, David and Lucy, it's going to be your turn. So two of you need to prepare for your presentation. David? Lucy?
Yes, Prof. I'm here.
Yes, Lucy. Next week is your turn. Your turn to present.
Okay.
David?
Okay, Prof.
Yeah, next week is your turn.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, Dennis and thank you for your very long, over 2 hours presentation. I enjoyed a lot. Thank you for your endeavors. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, time is up. So we're gonna see you guys next week. Have a nice week. See you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ashoto, 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 Ashoto.
Ashoto. What is it? Tell me the meaning.
Oh, that's Isaac's name. Isaac's name.
Mr. Richard.
Ashoto. I see.
Mr.
Okay.
Richard, this is why you're hailing me.
All right. Bye.